Listen carefully. What I'm about to say might offend your comfort, but it will save your future. Failure is not your enemy. Fear is. Comfort is. Laziness is. The real enemy is the voice in your head telling you to stop every time life punches back. Weak people fear failure because failure exposes who they really are. Strong people welcome it because failure is feedback. It's proof you're in the arena, not hiding in the crowd. If you've never failed, you've never aimed high enough to matter. You were programmed to believe failure means you're not good enough. That lie was sold to you so you'd stay average. Winners don't avoid failure. They hunt it. Every loss sharpens them. Every mistake teaches them. Every setback hardens their mindset. You think champions win because they're lucky. No. They've failed more times than you've even tried. Failure didn't break them, it built them. While others cried, they learned. While others quit, they adjusted. That's the difference. Here's the brutal truth. If failure scares you, success will never respect you. Life rewards aggression, not hesitation. The world doesn't care about your feelings, your excuses, or how many times you were almost ready. It only responds to action, and action comes with risk. Risk comes with failure. You cannot separate the two. Trying to avoid failure is the fastest way to guarantee a small, forgettable life. Every powerful man you admire has a graveyard of failures behind him. Businesses that collapsed, relationships that ended, decisions that backfired. But instead of seeing those moments as proof they were weak, they used them as fuel. Failure showed them where they were sloppy, where they were soft, where they needed to level up. Failure is a ruthless teacher, but it teaches lessons success never will. Ask yourself this: are you scared of failing, or are you scared of being exposed? Because failure doesn't embarrass you. Quitting does. Playing small does. Watching others live the life you were supposed to live while you stayed safe. That regret will haunt you far longer than any failure ever could. Failure hurts for a moment. Regret lasts forever. If you've never failed, it's not because you're talented. It's because you've been hiding. Failure is proof that you stepped forward when others stayed comfortable. It's evidence that you had the courage to act instead of waiting for perfect conditions that never come. The world is full of people who call themselves potential winners. But potential without action is just another excuse. Failure only visits those who actually try, and that alone separates you from the majority who spend their lives watching, talking, and wishing. Here's a truth: most people can't handle success does not respect spectators. It only acknowledges participants. Every time you fail, you prove you were brave enough to enter the arena where pressure is real and consequences exist. Sitting on the sidelines feels safe, but safety builds nothing. Comfort never creates power. The men who build something meaningful accept one fact early: action invites failure, and avoiding failure guarantees irrelevance. The question is not whether you will fail, but whether you are willing to move despite knowing you might. Most people fear failure because it threatens their image. They want to look smart, capable, and in control, even if they're doing nothing. But looking capable while staying stagnant is a losing strategy. Failure exposes reality. It strips away illusions and forces honesty. When something fails, you find out exactly where you were weak, unprepared, or lazy. That information is priceless. Failure doesn't insult you, it instructs you. But only disciplined minds listen instead of making excuses. Think about this for a moment. Every skill you admire was built on repeated failure. No one wakes up exceptional. Every expert you respect was once incompetent and embarrassed. They failed publicly, privately, and painfully. But instead of interpreting failure as a verdict on their worth, they treated it as data. They adjusted, refined, and tried again. That process is what creates confidence, not motivation, not talent. Repetition through failure is the real foundation of competence. Here's the hook most people miss: failing early is an advantage. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. The faster you learn, the harder you become to stop. Waiting until you feel ready only delays growth. Readiness is built through action, not thought. You don't prepare for battle by imagining it. You prepare by stepping into controlled chaos and adapting. Failure accelerates that process. It hardens decision-making, sharpens instincts, and removes emotional weakness. There's also a deeper reason failure matters. It builds self-respect. When you take action, even if it fails, you earn something internally that no praise can replace. You know you didn't run. You know you didn't hide. That internal respect compounds over time. On the other hand, avoiding failure creates a quiet form of self-contempt. You might not say it out loud, but deep down you know you played small. That voice never goes away. It gets louder with age. Failure also teaches accountability. You can't blame luck, timing, or other people forever when something doesn't work. Eventually, you're forced to ask better questions. What did I miss? Where was I careless? What skill do I need to build? That mindset is what separates leaders from complainers. Leaders take responsibility even when it hurts. Complainers look for comfort in excuses. One grows stronger, the other stays stuck. So understand this clearly. Failure is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're finally moving. Every serious attempt will come with resistance. Every meaningful goal will demand mistakes. The men who win are not the ones who avoid failure, but the ones who become immune to its emotional impact. They treat it as part of the cost of becoming dangerous, capable, and undeniable. Fear of failure is not a weakness you're born with. It's a habit you've trained. It's the invisible cage that keeps capable people living far below their potential. Fear doesn't scream at you. It whispers. It tells you to wait a little longer, to be more prepared, to avoid embarrassment, to play it safe. And while you're listening to that voice, life keeps moving forward without you. Opportunities don't pause. Competition doesn't slow down. The world rewards speed and courage, not hesitation. Here's the hook most people never confront. Fear feels logical, but it's lying to you. It pretends to protect you, but all it really protects is your comfort. Fear convinces you that failure will destroy your reputation, when in reality, invisibility is far more dangerous. No one remembers the man who never tried. No one respects the person who chose safety over growth. Fear doesn't save you from pain. It delays it and multiplies it later into regret. Fear of failure keeps people trapped in preparation mode forever. Planning, researching, thinking, and waiting become substitutes for action. It feels productive, but it's not. It's avoidance dressed up as intelligence. You can spend years getting ready and still be in the same place, while someone with half your talent but twice your courage passes you by. Fear loves perfection because perfection never arrives. It's the perfect excuse to never begin. The prison of fear is reinforced every time you obey it. Each time you back down, your confidence weakens. Each time you avoid risk, your tolerance for pressure drops. Fear doesn't stay the same size, it grows. What once scared you a little will eventually control you completely. Small risks turn into impossible challenges simply because you refuse to face them early. Fear compounds just like discipline does, but in the opposite direction. Another hard truth, fear of failure is often fear of judgment. You're not scared of the mistake. You're scared of how others might see you. That means you've given strangers control over your life. You're letting opinions from people who aren't building anything dictate your actions. Most of them wouldn't dare attempt what you're avoiding. And yet their imagined judgment has more power over you than your own ambition. That's a dangerous trade. Here's where the shift happens. Fear loses power the moment you act anyway. Action is the antidote, not confidence, not motivation action. The first step is uncomfortable. The second is easier. Momentum builds courage faster than thinking ever will. Once you move, fear has to react instead of control. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what can I fix? That's the mindset of someone who's no longer imprisoned. Fear also distorts reality. It magnifies consequences and minimizes capability. It tells you one failure will define you, when in truth, failure is rarely remembered by anyone except you. People are too busy with their own lives to obsess over your mistakes. And even if they notice, their opinion has zero impact on your ability to improve. The only real damage is when fear convinces you to stop entirely. Understand this, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that fear doesn't get to vote. Powerful people feel fear, but they don't negotiate with it. They move first and let confidence catch up later. That's how freedom is built. Not overnight, but rep by rep, decision by decision. The moment you stop obeying fear is the moment your life starts expanding instead of shrinking. Failure has a way of exposing the truth you can't hide from. It doesn't care about your intentions, your excuses, or how hard you believe you tried. It shows results, and results are brutally honest. When something fails, It highlights exactly where you were undisciplined, unprepared, or overconfident. Most people hate that level of honesty, so they avoid failure altogether. But avoiding failure means avoiding self-awareness, and without self-awareness, improvement is impossible. Here's the hook most people miss. Failure is the fastest diagnostic tool you'll ever get. It immediately reveals what books, motivation, and positive thinking never can. You find out whether your systems were weak, your habits inconsistent, or your skills underdeveloped. Success hides flaws. Failure drags them into the light. And the man who is willing to look at those flaws without ego gains a massive advantage over the one who pretends they don't exist. Weakness doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It compounds. If your discipline is poor, failure will show it. If your focus is scattered, failure will punish it. If your preparation is lazy, failure will embarrass it. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. Life doesn't sugarcoat lessons. It teaches through consequences. The sooner you accept that, the faster you stop blaming external factors and start correcting internal ones. Most people respond to failure emotionally. They get defensive, angry, or discouraged. They search for someone or something to blame so they don't have to confront themselves. That response keeps them stuck. Powerful people respond analytically. They slow down, break the situation apart, and ask uncomfortable questions. What did I underestimate? Where did I cut corners? What skill do I lack right now? Those questions hurt, but they produce growth. There's a critical shift that happens when you start seeing failure as information instead of an insult. You stop taking it personally and start taking it seriously. Failure isn't saying you are incapable. It's telling you what to upgrade. That mindset removes ego from the process. Once ego is gone, learning accelerates. You stop protecting your image and start building real ability. Another uncomfortable truth is this: failure often reveals character flaws, not just technical ones. It shows impatience, arrogance, inconsistency, or lack of resilience. Skills can be learned quickly, but character must be forged. Failure applies pressure, and pressure exposes what's really there. Some crumble, some complain, and some adapt. The difference isn't talent. It's willingness to confront reality without running from it. Here's the advantage few people use. Failure gives you a clear target. Instead of guessing what to work on, you know exactly where to focus. Your training becomes precise. Your effort becomes efficient. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and double down on what does. That kind of clarity is rare, and it only comes to those who failed honestly. Most people repeat the same failures because they never extract the lesson. They feel the pain, but they don't do the work. Pain without reflection is useless. Pain with analysis is transformation. The man who studies his failures becomes dangerous because he's no longer guessing, he's correcting. When you understand that failure is exposing weakness so it can be eliminated, not to shame you, your relationship with it changes. You stop fearing exposure and start craving accuracy. And accuracy is power. Winners are not special because they avoid failure. They're special because they collide with it more often than anyone else. The uncomfortable truth is this: the men you call lucky have simply taken more shots than you. They stepped forward while others hesitated. They attempted things most people were too afraid to even consider. Failure didn't scare them away. It became part of their daily routine. And that volume of attempts is exactly why they eventually dominate. Here's the hook most people refuse to accept. Losers don't lose because they fail too much. They lose because they don't try enough. They stay trapped in observation mode, analyzing other people's success while protecting their own fragile ego. Winners, on the other hand, understand that every attempt, successful or not, moves them forward. Each failure adds experience. Each mistake sharpens judgment. Progress doesn't come from thinking, it comes from repetition under pressure. Look closely at high performers in any field. Entrepreneurs, athletes, leaders, they all share one thing in common: an abnormal tolerance for failure. They launch ideas that don't work. They make decisions that backfire. They trust plans that collapse. But instead of stopping, they increase speed. They adjust faster than others recover emotionally. While the average person is still processing one failure, the winner has already failed twice more and learned something new each time. The gap between winners and losers is not intelligence or resources. It's attempt rate. Winners compress decades of learning into years because they're willing to be wrong repeatedly. Losers stretch simple lessons across a lifetime because they avoid risk. Every failure a winner experiences is a shortcut. It eliminates a wrong path and points them closer to what works. That's why their progress looks sudden from the outside, even though it's built on years of unseen losses. Another hard truth, failing often builds emotional immunity. The first few failures hurt. They shake confidence. They feel personal. But over time, failure loses its emotional sting. It becomes procedural. Winners stop attaching their identity to outcomes. They care about execution, not ego. That emotional control is a massive advantage. While others panic, winners stay calm. While others freeze, winners keep moving. That's how momentum is built. Most people never reach this stage because they quit too early. They experience one or two failures and interpret them as signs they're not meant for success. That belief is comfortable but deadly. Winners never ask whether they're meant for it. They assume they are and act accordingly. They understand that failure is not a signal to stop. It's confirmation that the process is working. There's also a discipline advantage here. Repeated failure forces structure. It demands better systems, tighter habits, and higher standards. You can't keep failing at a high level without either improving or burning out. Winners choose improvement. They refine their routines, sharpen their skills, and remove inefficiencies. Losers stay chaotic because they never stay in the game long enough to need structure. Think about this. If you attempt 10 times more than the average person, even with the same skill level, you'll outperform them. Volume beats talent when talent refuses to act. And over time, volume creates talent. Repetition under pressure turns average ability into elite competence. That's not motivation, that's mathematics. The reason winners fail more than losers ever try is simple. They value progress over pride. They're willing to look foolish today to be unstoppable tomorrow. They understand that failure is temporary, but skill is permanent. Every failed attempt deposits something into their internal bank: experience, resilience, awareness. Eventually, those deposits compound into dominance. Once you see failure as a numbers game instead of a personal judgment, everything changes. You stop asking, "What if this fails?" and start asking, "How many attempts will it take?" That mindset alone separates builders from spectators. Respect is not given for comfort. It is earned through resistance, and nothing tests a man like the moment things fall apart. Failure is where respect is decided, not success. Success is visible, polished, and celebrated. Failure is raw, private, and humiliating. Most people walk away at that stage because they don't want to feel the discomfort. But walking away is exactly what strips a man of self-respect. Quitting doesn't just end a project, it erodes identity. Here's the hook: people avoid admitting failure doesn't damage your confidence. Quitting does. You can fail 10 times and still sleep with dignity if you know you stood your ground. But quit once out of fear, and that memory will replay in your mind for years. It becomes a quiet reminder of who you could have been. That regret is heavier than any temporary embarrassment failure could ever cause. When you fail and continue, something powerful happens internally. You build trust with yourself. You prove that pressure doesn't make you fold. That internal trust is rare, and it shows in how you move, speak, and decide. People sense it. They respect it even if they don't understand it. Confidence built through persistence is unshakable because it's rooted in evidence, not words. Quitting, on the other hand, teaches you a dangerous lesson: that discomfort is a valid reason to stop. Once your mind accepts that rule, it applies it everywhere. You quit workouts when they hurt. You quit relationships when they get difficult. You quit goals when progress slows. Over time, quitting becomes a pattern, and patterns define identity. You don't just quit tasks, you become a quitter. That's not an insult, it's a consequence. Failure, when faced correctly, does the opposite. It strengthens your tolerance for adversity. Each time you endure it, your capacity expands. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once intimidated you becomes familiar. That resilience becomes part of your reputation, first with yourself, then with others. People respect those who don't disappear when things go wrong. Reliability under pressure is one of the rarest and most valuable traits in the world. There's also a deeper layer to respect that most people ignore. Self-respect doesn't come from winning. It comes from effort aligned with values. When you commit to something meaningful and refuse to abandon it at the first sign of difficulty, you align your actions with your standards. That alignment creates inner stability. You don't need applause because you know you didn't betray yourself. That internal approval is more powerful than external validation. Regret works differently. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up late at night, in quiet moments, in conversations you don't say out loud. It asks uncomfortable questions. What if I had tried one more time? What if I had endured the discomfort? That voice grows louder with time, not softer. Failure fades. Regret sharpens. One teaches, the other haunts. Here's another hard truth. People don't remember your failures nearly as much as you think. They remember your persistence. They remember whether you showed up again after being knocked down. History respects those who stood firm more than those who were flawless. Perfection is forgettable. Persistence is memorable. Choosing to face failure instead of quitting is a decision that compounds. Each time you choose to continue, you strengthen your identity as someone who doesn't run. That identity becomes your edge. Skills can be copied, ideas can be stolen, but the ability to endure without breaking is rare, and rare traits command respect. When you understand that failure builds self-respect while quitting builds regret, the choice becomes clear. You stop measuring outcomes and start measuring character. And character, once built, becomes your strongest asset. Most people don't choose a small life on purpose. They drift into it by avoiding discomfort. They tell themselves they're being realistic, patient, or cautious. But beneath those words is a simple truth. They're afraid to fail. And that fear quietly shapes every decision they make. The goals become safer. The ambitions shrink. The risks disappear. Over time, life narrows, not because of lack of ability, but because of lack of courage. Here's the hook that cuts deep. Avoiding failure doesn't protect your future, it limits it. Every time you refuse to take a risk, you place an invisible ceiling over your life. You decide, without saying it out loud, that comfort matters more than growth. That choice compounds. Years later, people wonder why their life feels smaller than their potential. The answer is almost always the same. They avoided the very risks that would have expanded them. A small life is not defined by money or status alone. It's defined by how little of yourself you use. It's waking up knowing you're capable of more, but choosing routines that never challenge you. It's staying silent when you should speak, staying still when you should move, and settling when you should demand more. None of that happens in one dramatic moment. It happens gradually through repeated avoidance of failure. Embracing failure forces expansion. When you accept the possibility of failing, you give yourself permission to aim higher. Bigger goals require bigger risks. Bigger risks require thicker skin. That process stretches you mentally, emotionally, and strategically. You start thinking in longer timelines. You stop chasing comfort and start building capacity. Even when outcomes don't go your way, you become larger as a person. There's a psychological shift that happens when you stop trying to protect yourself from failure. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop waiting for certainty. You begin acting from intention instead of emotion. That alone separates people who live fully from those who live carefully. Careful living feels safe in the short term, but it creates long-term dissatisfaction. Fully engaged living is uncomfortable, but it builds meaning. Another hard truth is this: many people mistake a quiet life for a peaceful one. But peace without purpose eventually turns into emptiness. Avoiding failure might reduce short-term stress, but it also removes challenge, and without challenge, there is no growth. Humans are built to struggle, to solve, to overcome. When you deny yourself that process, you don't become happier, you become restless. A small life also limits your impact on others. When you play small, you don't just deny yourself growth, you deny others inspiration. People don't need perfection from you, they need proof. Proof that it's possible to try, to fail, and to keep going anyway. Your willingness to embrace failure gives others permission to do the same. That ripple effect only comes from action, not from staying safe. There's also a financial and strategic cost to avoiding failure. Innovation, leadership, and progress all require risk. Those who refuse to fail remain dependent on those who are willing to try. Independence is earned through discomfort. Freedom is built on decisions that could go wrong. The more you avoid failure, the more you rely on systems, people, and structures built by braver individuals. When you accept that failure is part of the price of a meaningful life, your standards change. You stop asking how to avoid pain and start asking how to build strength. You stop chasing guarantees and start building skill. That mindset doesn't eliminate fear, but it removes its authority. Living small is easy. It requires no courage, no resilience, no adaptation. But it costs you everything that makes life worth respecting. Embracing failure demands more from you, but it gives more back: capacity, depth, and a life that actually reflects what you're capable of. So stop running from failure. Run toward it. Chase it. Use it. Let it strip you of excuses and force you to become stronger, smarter, and more disciplined. Fail fast. Learn faster. Come back sharper. Because the man who understands that failure is not the enemy becomes unstoppable. Remember this: failure is not here to destroy you. It's here to reveal you. And once you stop fearing it, nothing in this world can control you again.